to my channel. In today's video we're going to do my September wrap up. This will not include the stuff I read during Contemporary-a-thon, but pretty much everything else that I read during the month. So let's go ahead and get started. The first book that I read in the month of September was Shallow Graves. This was a ghost story about a girl who had been murdered. However, this book was not what I was expecting, especially since she technically wasn't really even a ghost. I don't know how else to explain this book except for it wasn't what I was expecting, but it also wasn't what I wanted either. So overall, I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Next, I read the graphic novel Fake Blood by Whitney Gardner. This one was a cute story about a boy who is trying to get the girl and realize the girl is interested in vampires, so he pretends to be one until he realizes the girl is a vampire hunter. This is a cute middle grade graphic novel. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I guess the best way to describe it was that it was a cute, self-contained story. And next I read Halfway Girl, which is the 2.5 in the Girl series by Tessa Bailey. I ended up giving this a 2 star. This one was about the sister of the guy from the book 2 and her being kind of grown up and at college and her meeting a guy. I kind of have come to the conclusion that I'm not the biggest fan of Tessa Bailey's storylines, and if I am not like a big fan of the storyline, then I'm not a big fan of the romance, and so I'm going to be more selective with her story. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about together, even though I didn't read them together, and that's Queen Takes Knights and Queen Takes King, and they are about a woman who realizes she is a vampire, and the men who start are basically her rooks, and it's a very erotic series, and it's basically very polyamorous as well. I gave the first one 4 stars and I gave the second one 3 stars. It's definitely not for everyone, and I don't know if I'm going to continue on. It was a fun time, however, the plot kind of started to disappear as the second book progressed, if that makes any sense. The next book I want to talk about is actually a short story collection, and that is Unnatural Creatures. It is edited by Neil Gaiman, and I ended up overall giving this collection 3 stars. There were a couple of stories in it that I overall really liked, but there were quite a few doozies in here. I really liked the 2 werewolf stories that were in it, but that's probably because I've been on a werewolf story kind of kick prior to this, so that might have had some sway in my enjoyment of these stories, but overall I feel like me and Neil Gaiman do not super click, and so maybe that's why I didn't enjoy this collection. So overall I gave this one a 3, but I'm glad that I read it. The next book that I read was actually one of those kind of romance books where you read it and then you immediately forget about it, and it was called The Upside of Falling Down. I gave this book 3 stars. This is about a woman who was on an airplane and it crashed, and she does not remember who she was, how she got where she was, and anything else, and the story kind of goes from there. I don't remember anything else about this one except for that the ending was overall not anything new, and I gave this one 3 stars. I read In a Badger Way, which is the second book in the Honey Badger Chronicles. This one involves one of the Honey Badger sisters and a panda shifter, and I'm really enjoying this world. I don't know why at this point I haven't continued on with the 3rd book. However, I don't want to say too much else except for basically this is a Honey Badger shifter series and it's really fun. And so I'll just leave it at that. I read The 10,000 Doors of January, which I received an e-arc of through NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. This book has since come out. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. When I first read it, I thought I was probably going to give it a 4. However, as time has gone on, I've decided to give it a 3. This book is a historical fiction, but it's kind of portal fantasy at the same time. This book is definitely really interesting when you go in. However, the deciding to have the book inside of the book kind of deal kind of brought my enjoyment down for it, and so I ended up only giving this one a 3. It is very lyrical writing, so if that's something you're into, you might enjoy this one a bit more than me, as well as historical fantasy. The next book that I read in September was Bringing Down the Duke. I won this in a Goodreads giveaway, which basically and this is about a woman whose scholarship basically has to deal with the suffragist movement, and it gets entangled with this duke who wants nothing to do with it, and things ensue, and it was just a really fun, cute historical romance, and I overall gave this book a 4 star, and it was a very cute romantic debut. The next book I I read was Barbarian Lover. This is book 3 in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. This is a series about women who were kidnapped from Earth and now live on a ice planet where they are kind of now getting paired off with these barbarians that live on the planet, but it's not as creepy as it sounds. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I enjoyed this one just okay. I wasn't a big fan of this pairing, and it happens with romance books. I definitely do plan on continuing on with this series. Next book I read was House of Salt and Sorrow by Erin A. Craig. This is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling that is a kind of gothic-y horror setting, which I definitely think this author shined at doing. Overall, I gave this book a 3 stars. I really love where this setting is and how this setting is described. However, I was kind of left down by this overall mystery for this story, and that's kind of how my rating fell. If this mystery and the outcome of this story was just a little bit better, I would have definitely given this a higher rating. The next book that I read was Creeping Shadow, which was the 4th book in the Lockwood & Company series by Jonathan Stroud. Me and my partner have been listening to these audiobooks for this series. This is about Lucy, our protagonist, and Lockwood, who owns the company. This one takes place shortly after where the last story left off, and I definitely feel like this story is kind of wrapping up. The story is definitely wrapping up, and I am excited to see where it heads. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next, I read Mr. Mercedes for the Loosely Bound Book Club. This is the 1st book in the Bill Hodges series by Stephen King. I have decided that I need to just stop reading Stephen King books. It's just not a great time for me. I ended up giving this one a 3. This one is his detective series. I just felt bored the whole time, and that's not what I wanted out of this. I didn't want to be bored. And the last 2 books I'm actually going to talk about together because they are book 1 and book 1.5, and I ended up reading book 2 during Contemporary-a-thon. This series starts with this woman who has been dumped right before her wedding and goes to France on what would have been their honeymoon and meets this man, and they kind of hit it off. I ended up giving book 1 3 stars. I felt like that there were quite a few things that I could have overlooked with this one, but overall I enjoyed it, especially since the character understood her flaws that I thought were a little extreme, but I felt like the character and her relationship with the guy she was head over heels with by the end of the book was really developed. However, the 1.5 basically turns the characters on their head and doesn't really do a good job of being a 1.5, and I am really disappointed, and I still haven't decided if I'm going to read the very last one in this series. Alright, so these are, well, these aren't, but that is everything that I read in the month of September, minus everything that I read for Contemporary-a-thon. What did you read in September? I know it was a while ago, but let me know in the comments down below. If you like what you saw here today, be sure to like and subscribe. I post videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a nice day!